Actually, every time I come back to Singapore, like in China, you never touch cash. Like I don't think anybody has seen cash in the
Are you serious?
in the past like decade.
Wow.
Like no, like people don't even buy wallets anymore because you kind of just get like card holders. You don't need like a
What?
wallet where you can slot notes into.
Wait a second.
I have
Because-
never touched.
So
like
you're
a
saying that
Chinese
this
note.
is a relic of the past in China?
Because even cards nowadays, people keep it on their phones or on their like
Wow.
smartwatches.
That's
Yeah,
so
so like
surprising.
coming back to Singapore, it feels really rustic to be able to like kind of just use cash here. Yeah.
The following is a long open conversation with Rebecca Yang, the Chief Investor Officer at the Gen Z Investment Club. We got a chance to sit and talk about many topics, like what was her life growing up both in Singapore and Suzhou, China, which has been the way of living with the digital payments, and what is active investing about. This is On the Long with FVR podcast. If you like this thing, feel free to like and subscribe and to contribute to the channel on the description below. And now with y'all, Rebecca Yang. Can you believe that the weather is always hot in Singapore? It's always sunny in Philadelphia. It's always hot in Singapore.
Pretty much eternal summer.
Oh yeah, it's time to start. 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode on the Long with FVR. Today we have Rebecca. Thanks for doing this.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, a lot of people have been asking about the guests, about the travels, but it's good to see somebody that we met back in February finally make it to the podcast.
Yeah.
So, many people will be asking you, wait, why is this guest here? So, why don't you tell us a little more about yourself?
So like, hi everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm a Singaporean, so I was born and raised here. And then I actually spent a bit of time overseas in China, but eventually I came back to Singapore, and then I did my Cambridge A-levels, and then so in 2020 I actually decided to go to China to study, so to do my bachelor's, and then but unfortunately COVID hit, so I spent my first year online, and then I was quite fortunate to be able to go over in my second year. So ever since 2021 till about now, I've been spending most of that in Beijing, in Tsinghua University.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm an economics and finance major, and right now I'm just on my winter holiday, and I'm interning at an investment firm.
Wow, that's amazing. Especially because we met back in February. It was in one of those very nice breakfast places close to Chinatown.
Chinatown, yeah.
It was Dean and also Persis who actually made the episode back then. And I remember we were sitting with Rafael, Gaukar, and Eric and myself. It was like very nice club. And you are also part of the Gen Z.
Yeah.
So what is that about?
Yeah, so I got to know Gen Z. Gen Z is an investment club for university students. Most of us are from Singapore right now, but there are people from China and also from Europe and the States. And so what we try to do is we try to learn about investing and try to just manage like a small amount of money, but through like actually investing with real money, we hope to kind of learn how to appreciate real risk and how to actually make an investment process that we feel is, reflects our investment philosophies, kind of reflects what we're interested in and what we think is going to bring value to the world. And I think that's really exciting because before I joined the club, I didn't know anything about investing. So my family is very conservative, very like a lot of Asian families don't like to talk about money, and they don't like to think about investing or talk about investing because it seems like something that's really risky, or it seems like something that's almost like gambling. So my family didn't really talk about investing. We didn't have any of our money in stocks or in any kind of other assets. I think all the way until I graduated high school, I didn't really know what a stock market was. I had so basically no exposure to it, but I happened to learn about the club from Tiffany, who's one of our co-founders, and She's my senior from Tsinghua University. Yeah, so she just kind of shared the recruitment link, and I was pretty lucky to kind of chance upon it and read about how there was this bunch of university students just kind of gathering together and like trying to learn more about the world and trying to learn more about investing and kind of being empowered through that. And I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to kind of see for myself how do you invest? How do you be a part of something that seems so far away from most of us? Having a tiny like share of ownership in a company, but also like being empowered and being able to see like, oh, I'm just a university student, but I can also look at companies. I can also look at how other people are valuing companies, and I can have my own opinion, and I can gather my own research and test my own assumptions. I think there's a lot of room to learn and a lot of room to kind of also meet other people who have a lot of their own styles and their own quirks and their own beliefs. So I joined back in 2020. So I joined as I started university.
Wow.
Yeah, so they teach us the basics. So kind of from start to end, how do you go from not having an investment idea to kind of looking at sectors, looking at industries, looking at trends, and then kind of zeroing in throughout that process. Be like, oh, if I zero in on an industry, if I zero in on a trend, like what is the next step? Like how do I look at the financials across this? What do I do to kind of have a better structured idea of how to go about valuing a company to at the very end be able to make your case and to have that pitch in front of other people and to kind of talk about it, get feedback from everybody. So they kind of train us throughout that entire process, and that last so things have kind of changed. Now we have a boot camp where we kind of condense that into like a month of like weekends, but I think back then I think we stretched it out to I think more than a month. But it's also on the weekends, and we would have a lot of alumni and a lot of professionals in our network come and teach the students. These are some of the fundamentals of what are the tools, like the most basic tools you need to kind of get started. Yeah, so I did that for maybe about a few months, and then after that it was straight into kind of looking at stocks and kind of trying out firsthand how to look at a company, building models, and then kind of learning how to cover a stock, not just buy it and then like forget about it, but also kind of how do you keep looking at it? How do you keep thinking about, oh, what else can I be missing, or like what else could I have been, making an assumption about, but I didn't really actually test it enough. Yeah, so that was really interesting to me. I think now we've sort of transitioned the club into kind of more like one big fund, and to kind of just simulate what the firms out there do, where we have a chief investment officer, we have PMs, and we have teams that are looking at sectors, or we have like a process where we have IC meetings, and we sort of just look at the investment process as like try to mimic it as closely as we can to what a real firm does. But obviously we're first timers, so we don't really know, how do the professionals do it. So we're really lucky to have people on our board come in and teach us, for the CIOs, how do you go about thinking about your exposure, and how do you go about designing your structure and your process so that you can help everybody in your team be motivated, have an incentive to pitch their ideas, to get feedback, to be enthusiastic, and to participate in the process. So that's all been a really interesting learning process for me. Again, I think if I look back on kind of who I was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I can't imagine how different my life would be if I didn't join Z Club and I didn't learn about investing. So it's really been something that's it's quite cliche, but I think it's been quite life-changing for me, and I'm really grateful to the people who had this idea of teaching young people about investing and kind of viewing investing not as just as a way to generate returns, but also to think about whether we can support like other students from less privileged backgrounds to also learn about investing, and how do we just get young people excited about discovering value in markets and like kind of building confidence in themselves about what their ideas are, or kind of building their own skills so that they can be proud of their own kind of like at the end of the day what their own philosophy is or what their kind of skill level is, and just kind of enjoy that process. So I think that's been a really fun, really great learning experience for me.
It's very insightful that you mentioned how the change has become back in 2020 when you mentioned it's like a taboo. So today now the confidence has been not only from the theory and the exposure but also of the practice. It resembles so much what we learn in MIT, the mens et manus, which is learning by doing. The only way you earn the confidence is because you are doing the stuff. And I see the two parallels right there to each other. Now, given at the beginning that you are a Singaporean, how was growing up in Singapore?
Yeah. Okay, so my childhood is kind of split between Singapore and China. So I was born here. My parents are first generation immigrants. So it was a lot of, I don't remember this part that clearly because I was pretty young, but from what I know and what they've told me, it was a lot of them trying to find their place, going from like small rented one-room apartments to like having like a 3-room like a public housing flat, and then renting that, and then having children, and then when I was 4, my dad got an opportunity to work in the Suzhou Singapore Industrial Park. So that's an economic project between Suzhou, China, and Singapore. So that was probably one of the most pivotal moments in my life because what he did then was to uproot our entire family and move to Suzhou. Yeah, so and then I spent the next maybe 5-6 years there. So that was where like there's suddenly a split in my childhood between Singapore and China. And then over there, I didn't attend a local school, so my parents were a little bit worried about whether I'd be able to kind of rejoin the Singaporean education system if I went to a local school. So luckily the expat package covered the school fees, so they sent me to an international school. But that was the first time that I met so many people from so many different countries. And I think those years in the international school, especially because I was so young, it was just a lot more about me learning how to, not so like high level stuff, learning about globalization or whatnot, but it was just really simple, like meeting other friends from other cultures. And then like I had best friends who were from like Denmark or Korea or Japan or like the States, and it was really fun to kind of go to different birthday parties and realize that and go to like different houses for sleepovers and realize that everybody has like their own kind of, everybody holds on to their own culture even though we're all kind of expats or we're all in a different country. Yeah, but I think back then I was still very confused about what being Singaporean was because obviously I didn't go to school in Singapore, so I only went to like preschool, and then my whole like memory or my whole idea of Singapore was still kind of fuzzy. Yeah, so back then I think one of the feelings I remember having is just that I didn't really feel very Singaporean, or I didn't feel like I had a very distinct kind of like image, or I had a lot to say about what it was like being Singaporean. Yeah, but basically we spent 5-6 years there. I came back when I was 9 because I have an older brother, and in Singapore when you turn 11 or 12, you have to take a primary school leaving examination. Yeah, so that determines which middle school or secondary school, as we call it in Singapore, that you go to. Okay. So my brother hit that age, so my parents were like, okay, we're gonna head back to Singapore. And then but it was a pretty good point for him because he was just gonna go to a new school and start like secondary school or middle school. But I was coming in the middle of like elementary. Like I came in at primary 4, which is like other people have already been in like elementary school for 3 years. So this was a really I think difficult time in my life because I had to adjust to a very different environment. So for one, Singapore's climate is very different. Singapore looks very different. the Suzhou Singapore Industrial Park, it's very much like a business district with residential projects around. But I think for Singapore, there's a lot of like heartland housing around like the like northeast west, and then like central and like south is more of like city. But like yeah, so that was I had to kind of get used to like a different environment. But in school, I was also not used to how they did exams here. So in international school, they're not too heavy on academics. But in Singapore, from a very young age, it's very, very important that for the exam that I talked about just now, it affects which stream you go into. So a lot of people really want their children to get into a stream that kind of expedites their like education journey, helps them get into these like more prestigious schools, or helps them kind of get an edge in life first. So a lot of like the time I spent in primary school was basically gearing up for this exam. But when I first came in, I got sorted into a lower ranking class. So the way a lot of Singaporean schools do it is that they sort people into streams. So they have different classes based on your grades, and then they kind of want to cater the teaching and kind of the pace of classes according to which kind of students at what level you have. So I was sorted into, I think, a very kind of towards the end. And then obviously for somebody who's going to take a really like life-changing exam in 3 years, that was kind of scary. So I think I just remember feeling a lot of like doubt and like this like 9-year-old just going like, oh, I suddenly have like so much pressure and so much like expectation of like learning to do well in the Singaporean system. But I think I was quite lucky. I got a lot of help from my parents and my teachers in school. So I think I managed to achieve what was conventionally what an ideal kind of score or ideal kind of grade for the exam, so the primary school leaving exam. And I got to go to one of probably one of the most popular, one of the most like brand name schools in Singapore. So that's a girls' school in Bukit Timah. Yeah, so another benefit of the streaming is that if you get into an integrated program, you don't have to take the second exam, which is 4 years later, that determines which high school you get into. So that was something that a lot of people wanted, because that's just one less like huge like checkpoint for you, and then you get to gain direct entry into a really good junior college, and then after that, then there's one more final Cambridge A-level exam for one of the streams that I went through. But there are other streams. But I was quite fortunate to get to Nanyang Girls. So this is a girls' secondary school, and then here I kind of discovered China for the first time. So when I was 15, so the Singapore Ministry of Education has this bicultural studies program that encourages Singaporeans to learn about China. And not just the history or kind of the ancient civilization, like culture of China, but also just modern day China and how far it's come since the reform and opening up, how it's sort of come to its place in modern day society, how it's kind of changed the global order, and how, more importantly, Singapore is going to work with China and the geopolitics behind that. But that was one thing. They call it bicultural because they also want us to learn, who are the other stakeholders in this game, and that's obviously the West, the developed countries. So they actually included a lot of courses, a lot of kind of events and activities, and also like immersion trips. So we got to go to China a lot. We spent, I think, in total maybe 3 months in China, just traveling during the holidays, going to schools, going to government organizations, going to corporations, just to kind of get us exposed, and even going to the university. So actually the first time that I went to Tsinghua was in 2016 when I was 15, and then we had some Singaporeans who were studying there kind of bring us around, and I got to see for the first time what a Chinese university looks like. Yeah, so I think that program and my decision to join that program was a pretty important part in me going on to junior college and taking so A-levels, you can pick a lot of your subjects. So if you're more of a humanities person, then maybe you like history or you like literature, then you pick those classes or those subjects to like take your exam for at the end of 2 years. But I was more interested in biology, chemistry. So as part of my program, as part of my scholarship, I needed to take this other class on China called China Studies. Yeah, so what that course in summary is about is we look at different facets of China. So China's economy, China's politics, China's kind of diplomatic relations, and also the Chinese economy. Yeah, so through these different kind of pillars, we just have a very kind of, it was more breadth than depth, but it gave us a pretty full picture of modern day China. Yeah, so I basically took that and it helped me learn a lot more about what I personally find is really interesting about China, which is it's this country that kind of achieved this economic miracle, but at the same time, it has such a unique sort of governance style. It has, such like a unique kind of, even if you look at like how big it is and how its government is organized. It has the central government and it has all the local governments. What kind of policies it implements and what kind of relationship it has with other countries as it's trying to transition from being like a manufacturing nation to trying to go into more high end and having more conflicts with its trade partners. Like all that was really interesting to me. And at the end of the day, the course doesn't teach us to be pro-China. It teaches us to be very, very objective when you look at China and when you try and think about its opportunities and its challenges. So at the end of the day, it felt really interesting as a Singaporean. Like so many Singaporeans take this course. I think it's because we're sort of on the outside. We're like kind of in between the West and China, and then they're both really important trade partners, and then just kind of navigating that and kind of developing and like grooming people who are kind of more interested in kind of uncovering this, what I felt was kind of misunderstood and like less covered. So I think there's a lot of Western media that portrays China in a very negative light. I don't think that this is they're necessarily being unfair or they're necessarily having a motive. In some cases, yes, but to varying degrees. But I think overall, it's very easy to kind of just gloss over China because people don't want to learn about this very country that has a very negative image. But I think it deserves a closer look into what exactly is making it do some things that the rest of the world doesn't approve of, or what exactly is it trying to kind of change itself into, and what kind of relationships is it trying to kind of build within its trade partners, and kind of what kind of image for China, like for themselves, what kind of story are they trying to tell as China. So all that was really interesting to me, and also because in Singapore you have to take 2 languages, so you have to take English and you also have to take your mother tongue, so basically your native language. Yeah, so ever since elementary school or primary school, I've been taking Chinese. So, and then as a second generation immigrant, I speak Chinese at home. So I think from a very young age, I've been pretty comfortable with Chinese. And the norm is that most people from my high school like to go to either stay in Singapore for university or go to the West. So either go to like the States or to the UK or maybe even to Europe. But not a lot of people wanted to go to China because I think there's one thing about just people not knowing enough about China, and the other thing was the language thing. But I thought, since I'm actually really interested in China, and since language won't be that much of a problem for me, I thought that, this was something that I really wanted to kind of do for myself and kind of put myself in an environment where I can get to meet more Chinese people for once. So back when I was studying China, it was all, desktop research, away and just listening to my Singaporean teachers. But I've never actually been, studying with Chinese people and been like making friends with Chinese people and just living almost like a Chinese person, like using like services from the internet giants in China, or kind of looking at what kind of communities and what kind of what the cities look like even, or what kind of products and services that Chinese people use. So that was something that I really wanted to do. So I made the decision to go to China for university. Yeah, but unfortunately COVID hit. So the first year it was quite difficult because you feel a bit of FOMO. You feel a bit of, there's like, because everybody else who was already in China and some international students who could get visas in, they'd already started their college life. But for a lot of us, like kind of just starting university far away from your own house, it was a little bit isolating, it was a little bit disappointing, but I think I was pretty lucky to be able to go over in my second year. Yeah, and I had Z Club to keep me busy for a lot of the first year or so. Yeah.
I can see here not only the spirit of going beyond, but also the explorer who wanted to not hear what the mainstream media says, but to see with her own eyes. That's actually encouraging, and it's not it's not a compliment; it's a fact. Because you mentioned that there is a percentage of Singaporeans that actually go and study in China.
More and more, yeah.
More and more, and because they realize that, well, I have the language, I have the skills. Literally, it's just crossing the pond. Well, why not? Makes sense. Now, given that perspective, and given that you are already talking about what is agency, I would like to talk something that is literally in front of us. The sponsor of this episode is 700 Café, located in, well, they don't pay, we pay for that. But it's good to give about the location. It's a very nice location next to the Golden Mile Tower. If you are taking the bus from Kuala Lumpur, usually the last place that the bus ends when you enter Singapore happens to be Golden Mile Tower. And literally it's in front of a very nice soccer center. They have a very nice hotel. They serve very nice coffee. So what did he give it to you?
Yeah, I got a latte. It's really good.
I got an espresso. And for people who love the Nescafe, yes, this is a red cup. It's not the Nescafe red cup, but it's a good cup, By the time that you arrived for the recording, there was like a lot of people because it feels like a tour. It's like one of those popular hotels that has a lot of value. But bringing back towards what the value of learning by doing is, and given your experience both in Asia and also in this field of investment, a lot of people feel this is a taboo, and sometimes they never enter. What will you tell to them? Hey, this is not a taboo. What is the gap that they are missing right now?
You need investing. Yeah. I think that investing is about risk. It involves a lot of risk, but I don't think that, like, just as a life philosophy, risk isn't always something that you can avoid or that's always against you. It's always going to land you in the worst position possible. I think being able to face risk and kind of just be in a position of power to try and inform yourself on kind of what kinds of things can I do to minimize my downside, or what kinds of information, or who can I talk to, or kind of what kind of questions can I think of that will help me manage risk. And I think that extends beyond investing, that extends to everything in life. So everything in life is uncertain, but that doesn't mean that we don't, go ahead and live life. It means that we look at the cost benefit, we try and position ourselves in, a kind of state where we can reap the most out of a situation and minimize our risks. And even as risks pop up, we adapt and we kind of change how we approach a certain subject, or we change what we do to kind of counter that. And I think that's what makes life exciting. That's what makes investing exciting. So I think I wouldn't say that there's only one way to invest. I think the fun thing about investing is that not everybody is all rushing into these super hot kind of areas to invest in. But there are people who tailor their investing to who they are and kind of what kind of objective they have in investing, what kind of returns they're comfortable with, or what kind of idea or what kind of value are they trying to like kind of achieve. So like I think you can sort of tailor it. Like I think there's a lot of fun and there's a lot of like benefit that comes from kind of facing risk head on and having a bit more of like a active role when it comes to looking at risk and versus just shying away from it and kind of being on the really passive side of, you know, I'll just let the randomness of the world sway me and then I will, you know, just kind of accept it and I will just shy away from things that I want to do. I don't think that's again, everybody has different levels of, you know, there are different risk appetites, but I don't think that that's one of the best ways to learn or to kind of experience more. I think it does help young people to make mistakes, to kind of run into unexpected things. But I think at the end of the day, we learn and we grow from it, and we learn how to like face uncertainty. And I think at the end of the day, you might even feel better after having taken an active kind of role in kind of facing and countering risk. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's like facing the risk because you can control it or you can deal with it instead of escaping from the risk. The risk will always get you. It's like, are you ready to take it or not? So that's something that is encouraging always to face off. But also number two, the taboo that some people mix investing with gambling. For some of our viewers that observe the Islam, of course, gambling is forbidden. But hey, they invest. I see them investing a lot of money, especially Sharia compliant stocks or Sharia bonds like the Sukuks. So even they are active investing. So there is like a kind of a language misinterpretation for some reason. Because hey, you really are taking a risk, trying to share it or trying to at least hedge it. It's really important to get the hands on. Now, I know that in Singapore regulations are very, very high when it's about the retail investor. Yeah, I'm not sure how different it is in China that a retail investor can actually buy a stock.
So retail investors make up more of the kind of total investors in China. I think, I'm not sure why exactly, but I think it's a lot more of the culture and kind of more people willing to go online and like have forums and kind of talk about investing like just individual to individual. So it's not actually as driven or dominated by institutional investors. And I think that's really interesting.
Oh yeah. It sounds like very familiar to what I see in the Americas. Like a lot of people go to Reddit, a lot of people go to the certain forums. They are like new fake jobs, like moderators in like nah, you're not that's not a job. It's just somebody sitting on a WhatsApp group just trying to be a moderator in Discord or something. That's not a job. Let's be honest. But hey, I've seen people more active right there saying this is a stock to buy, this is a stock to sell. Like 2 years ago, where there was the Wall Street bets, it was very retail driven, retail investor driven, and it's like a phenomenon that you don't see very often. Happy to see that at least there is an opportunity for the retail investors.
I think technology definitely makes it easier for retail investors to get started. So even you see this happening in Singapore as well. You have a lot of trading apps and a lot of these platforms coming up with products so that people can directly invest in like a wealth management product. So I think another thing in China is that for most of the middle class, like there are only a few ways to like kind of manage your wealth. So one big thing is property, so investing in housing. So like that's something that makes the kind of meltdown in the property sector so like devastating. It's because a lot of people are counting on these houses. So it's like a dream to kind of have a house and to settle down, and that's like what people work for, for a long time, and that's something that constitutes a big portion of their wealth. I think another thing is that to kind of also grow their wealth and kind of maintain being middle class, a lot of people also want to turn to stocks because it's something that you can kind of work on your like as a side hustle, but if you spend enough time on it and you kind of work on how to do it better, you can have a substantial side income from investing. So like just being a retail investor. And I think that's quite interesting because I think another thing about risk and about kind of the whole taboo of investing is that so one of our co-founders, Shinya, he's from a family in Japan that runs a pharmaceutical business, and he's very passionate about helping younger generations of people who come from wealth kind of learn how to invest and like maintain their family's wealth and kind of grow it rather than just letting it kind of be spent away. But I think for a lot of people in our club and for the general public and even in China, like being middle class is not something that you can expect to like just always stay that way. Like for the Chinese middle class, it's just as easy to go back down the social ladder as it is to go up. So a lot of people aren't necessarily looking to like hit it big or to like make a lot of money and kind of just retire early. I think a lot of people that's what makes it scary. A lot of people want to maintain their middle class like status. So I think investing does help with that, but that also means that the stakes of investing is a bit higher compared to someone who maybe has more of a safety net. Or like for the middle class, it's always been interesting. I always felt that Singapore does a really good job of helping the less privileged make sure that if you're unemployed, there's so many kind of like government initiatives and like help from the government to kind of support you through it and help you kind of get back on your feet. But I think this problem exists as well for the middle class, that like whenever inflation hits or if the economy is bad, that they kind of get hit down. But sometimes it doesn't mean that they fall down enough to like fall into a category where they're eligible for a lot of financial support. So I think this is quite like prevalent in Singapore and a lot of like middle class like people's lives in like a lot of Asian countries maybe, to kind of be in a state where you want to have like side income, but at the same time investing can be kind of scary because the stakes are high and you're literally betting on like whether you can stay as a middle class person on it. Yeah.
It's true what you mentioned about the prevalent uncertainty of your fixed income can actually sustain through the years. That's why a lot of people look for investments. And also there is like a hidden thing that is very few times discussed. Retirement, the annuities. This is something that I learned from Professor Cherian. You can see it right there on the bubble. He mentions about CPF in Singapore and how that you really need to be active in investing to generate enough income for your retirement, because inflation, cost of living, interest rates, all of a sudden you're going to be literally left out of your own home if you don't have enough. And it's true, more tools are needed to educate the people. Hey, you can also be well off in your later years, because this is something also I realized about investing, about people in the middle class or retirements. In the past, there was something called pensions. Now, there is no pensions even for the people in the army. Like in other countries, like let's be honest, please correct me if I am wrong, but I know some friends in India that if they serve in the army, they don't have the full pension anymore. At least from the people who start now. And it's like, wait a second. The social contract was, I defend the land, you give me a pension. Yeah, what is going on? I I know other places that you have to work 20 years just to get half your salary when you were an active member of the forces. Like, and I feel this is going to be something that is going to creep on all of us.
Yeah, I think especially for so many Asian countries, China, Singapore, Korea, Japan, the birth rate is like going down and down and down, and these countries are aging. So that affects a lot of people's futures. And if you think like we're still young, but like if we think about it, if there's fewer young people supporting and contributing to like pensions and kind of being able to support a growing elderly population, then that's actually a really serious problem for a lot of countries. So in China, so the whole reason why they're having the kind of regulatory crackdown on the healthcare sector is because they're kind of being forced to do it. It's because they don't have enough money to go around to help pay all these insurance dues and to help make sure that all the elderly people are taken care of. So one of the fastest ways to target or to kind of fix a budget deficit is to target corruption and try to like dig up as much money as you can and try to stop all the wastage and all the bribery and all the corruption and kind of help and just figure out which parts are just not right now so that we can kind of keep ourselves in shape and able to support the elderly population. But I also think this is interesting because like it really depends on whether people want to have children and how our country's going to face manpower shortage, especially for China. Like if you look at China used to have really cheap labor, but now because there's fewer and fewer younger people to provide that labor, so supply goes down and price of labor goes up. So you have other countries coming up like Vietnam that are kind of taking over the manufacturing and being the go-to choice for cheaper labor. Yeah, so this kind of forces China to kind of think about how we move up the value chain and like kind of start investing in industries that don't rely on just drawing in business because we have cheap labor. Yeah, but this is gonna be something that a lot of countries grapple with. So on that end, but also kind of just how to better support elderly people. So I used to volunteer at a lot of these grassroots organizations in Singapore. So we have a parliamentary system where we have representatives called members of parliament. Yeah, so these people are in charge of their respective constituencies, and then they hold weekly meetings with these like residents to make sure that they can hear what problems they have and try and figure out if there's a way that we can contact different agencies and explain the problem, try and figure out a way to help them. Yeah, but like a lot of the people who come to these sessions are really elderly people who are living by themselves or kind of struggling financially or need some kind of help with their like medical bills or they just don't understand how to use like a lot of like Singapore is transitioning to more like digital stuff, digital payments, even a lot of government services are on your phone through an app. But a lot of these old people don't really know how to use this stuff. So I think just like figuring out how to support the economy, how to like restructure, how to kind of transition like which part of the value chain you're at is one problem when you face like an aging population. But on the other hand, it's also how do I make sure that there are people who are trained. So like Singapore is always like putting out ads, like trying to get more people into the nursing industry, trying to get more people to join like the healthcare kind of industry, just so that we have people that are gonna like support these elderly like people who only are gonna get like bigger and bigger the population, and being able to like manage that as a social issue is also something huge for a lot of countries. And within here there's a lot of investment opportunities and a lot of good businesses and a lot of interesting trends and lots of big investments that I think can so I think the best investments are the ones that are able to identify a problem that's going to like have a long-term impact and actually like provide a solution for it. So I think if you can identify a macro trend and then see how certain industries are burgeoning or certain businesses are coming up with ways to kind of solve this huge problem for an entire country or for an entire like kind of kind of part of society, then I think that's actually extremely valuable, and it kind of makes investing and allocating capital like more meaningful. Yeah.
When I was hearing those last quotes, a lot of people may recall what I was watching. I felt I was also hearing Chamal Palihapitiya, one of those famous VCs with Jason Calacanis, about how to find trends and allocate capital. All of a sudden, I was like, wait a second. She's also talking like a VC right now. But it's true. It's true. When you find a problem and that creates an exponential growth, everybody wins. I'm surprised that you have been also involved in this community organizing with the parliaments, especially when the elder people say about these problems that happens in the neighborhoods. I would like to discuss something with you that I faced personally when I was walking in the streets of Singapore. Maybe some of you already know, but you know you're in Singapore when you see chicken on the street. Have you seen those? There is a lot of chickens around, loitering around, and it's like, wait a second, why is the police not actively doing something? And it's like, wait a second, they're chicken. I mean, you're not supposed to fear them, and if you're hungry, you have your dinner right there, you just have to grab it. But I remember like a year ago, there was an escalation of the problem, like there was so much chicken going on. When you were attending these meetings, did any of the elders commented about those things?
I don't think so. So I think a lot of Singaporeans are quite used to these wild animals. I'm not sure if they're the kind of chickens that we breed for food. They're more
they're
of like
the same.
these kind of like.
Kind.
I think there are some different breeds, some different kinds of these kind of wild. I'm not even sure what to call some of them.
But they look like chicken, right?
But in Singapore, we also have like wild boars, monkeys.
Ah, really?
Yeah. So I think it's a result of us having so much greenery, and we have a lot of protected forest areas. So we don't really want to like get rid of them completely. We kind of want to give them, like, if we're not destroying their habitat, they're gonna be there. But if they're not like endangering people, I think wild boars, they can be quite aggressive. Yeah, so that's definitely a problem that the National Environment Agency has to step in a bit more to kind of make sure that people are educated about how to avoid them, about who to call when you run into like.
When you see a wild boar in Louisiana, you shoot them. You have a shotgun, you shoot them because a wild boar is gonna attack you.
We can't do that in Singapore.
You need to defend yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, because they have been in the habitat, okay, the need of coexistence, understood. But at least this is not like let's say, Clearwater, Florida. Then there is an actual pythons. There are pythons right there, and hey, those are introduced species. They eat anything. It's like you have to hunt them, or the python will hunt you. Like, you have to defend yourself in that case. For the boars, like I'm surprised that, wait a second, if the boar enters my home, I need to kick the boar out, right?
Okay, so I think most of them won't venture too much into human civilization, but I think the government is always trying to strike a balance between giving them enough natural environment to roam, and then also keeping residents safe and making sure that how do we better keep an eye on these kind of incidents. But overall, I think that Singapore's wildlife biodiversity is still one of the best things. I think that growing up here, I used to go to like Singapore Zoo, and like they have a night safari. I don't know if you've been. It's really fun. So you go only at night, and then you're in this little tram, and then you get to see all these nocturnal animals that like really close up. Some of the more dangerous ones from far away, but some of the really tame ones that you can kind of like almost kind of like reach them, but of course you don't touch them. But like,
so
it's really fun.
In the end, the streets of Singapore are safe.
The streets generally.
So if I see, what do you mean generally? So if I see these 3 chicken coming at me saying, "Give me all the corn you have," like I don't have any corn.
I think wild animals are the same everywhere. So chickens, I've never seen people attacked by them. I think they're still not that aggressive. I think wild boars are probably the biggest problem. Um, but I think the government tries to get people not to leave food out in the open. Yeah, which is difficult because during certain times of the year, people who are religious will put
Like the
food out
Ramadan,
for sacrifice.
when they break the Ramadan, and you
Yeah.
have to eat sometimes in the street.
But that's one of the main reasons why you have some animals that are coming into like human kind of environments. Yeah, but one very funny story is when I was I think 14, I went to like Pulau Ubin, which is this small island to the south of Singapore, and we had to like camp there in tents. But because we're like kind of so close to the forest, at night there'll be wild boars running around. So like what they did was they put different tents on shifts throughout the night to get this like big stick and just kind of guard the entire camp from like 1 a.m. to like 2 a.m. So like your group will be in charge of kind of keeping everybody safe from the boars. But like even when you do that, sometimes the boars will just be really curious because they can smell us, they can see us. They'll kind of just like walk around our tents and you can hear their like hooves and you can like kind of see their shadows. It was really fun, I think, because I was from a girls' school, so all of us were these like teenage girls, just like Lord of the Rings style with this huge stick, and just like we were so scared. So like even when planes flew, it kind of sounded like growling. So we were just like scaring ourselves and like just being really timid, but at the same time we wanted to like protect our camp. Yeah, but I just remember having a really like interesting time doing that. So that's like I think probably the closest I've ever come to like meeting a wild boar. Yeah.
That's a very fascinating story, and also an act of courage, because it's true, you have fear inside, but it was a capacity to overcome that and have your own ground.
Like everybody had that responsibility.
To say to the board, not today. That's a good story. That's a very fun story. Oh yeah, I mean, how many good stuff about the wildlife and the coexistence of the wildlife. That's very cool. I mean, this is a huge evidence that contradicts the hypothesis that Singapore is just a city, because it has wildlife.
Yeah, I think Singapore tries really hard to be that garden city, to not just kind of have like beautiful like plants and like nature as like an aesthetic thing, but I think they really believe that you can help a city and the residents like be close to nature and have a relationship with biodiversity and learn about what kind of species are special to Singapore, and that helps people learn about why we should protect the environment. Imagine if you just had a concrete jungle and then you told people that it's important to protect the environment, that it's important to kind of protect endangered species. They don't see it. All they see is like stuff on the internet. They don't get to go to parks. They don't get to hear like park rangers talk to them about what kind of wildlife exists in our in our home country. And I think that kind of increases the distance and it makes people less interested, or kind of just have less direct of an experience with kind of nature. So that's something that I really appreciate about Singapore. Just like everywhere you go, there's so much greenery, and there's so many like great parks and like great like kind of like places where you can like learn more about wildlife and like see more wildlife, and kind of just like we even have like wetland reserves, which are kind of like an interesting thing, but like it's not too much action. You have to kind of like look out for like the little mud skippers and like the swamp animals, because they all like camouflage in their environment. But it's like a lot of like more like quiet, like looking out for wildlife, and I think that's also super fun. I went when I was like a really like small kid as well, but I still remember it.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
That's really fun. It's like that conspiracy theory that the aliens are already here and they're just hiding, just watching us. They're eating the same thing of us. They look like us. I was like, yeah, whatever. So this is what you have seen in Singapore. What have you seen in China that is similar and different when we talk about nature?
In nature. Okay, so I study in Beijing, and Beijing is the capital of China. So Beijing is historically the capital city, so it's always kind of been the capital city for a long time. It used to be elsewhere, but for like most of Chinese history, the capital of ancient China was Beijing. So that's where you get the Forbidden City, and then you have a lot more of that like central and political influence coming from Beijing being the capital. But like that's the historic side of Beijing, where you have these really like the palace is beautiful. It can take you like days and days to actually go into all of the rooms, and like thousands of rooms, and then just to appreciate like how cool it is that you can stand in like this huge imperial palace that used to be like the head of like where people govern and rule China. Yeah, but also among that you can see a lot of remnants of old Beijing, like the hutongs. So these are little like small little like rows, alleyways, and then like in these alleyways there are like these really traditional like kind of boxy houses. So like they'll be like courtyards almost. Yeah, they call these 四合院, which basically means kind of like four-walled courtyards. But these are like the most traditional or like a very characteristic thing of Beijing architecture. You have a lot of people like authors and like political figures that used to stay here. You can kind of go and visit where they used to live. So that's kind of the cultural part of Beijing. I think looking at Beijing's role now, and I guess just more about tier 1 cities, like more of the like Beijing and also the coastal cities that are more developed. I think those cities are turning out to be more like, so if you compare the nature aspect of Singapore, definitely not as much greenery. So like it's a lot more concrete, and then it's also a lot less wildlife. I don't think they have any like kind of focus on wildlife. Yeah, so like so that's something that I really missed about Singapore when I was there. But I think the way that like different cities are kind of like delegated different roles. So like Beijing, like I said, is the like political capital. But like if you go to places like Shanghai, like that's a way more Western. So that like Shanghai, Shenzhen, those are like the first cities to have a lot of Western influence and like kind of be open up to like foreign investment and to have more like foreigners come in and start to like work there. So I think parts of it become more westernized and it loses a little bit of its like local charm. So it's kind of like gentrification, but in a way that kind of like erodes the city's own kind of cultural like significance or its like kind of heritage. Kind of gets covered up by a lot of these kind of like Western restaurants or kind of just the kind of stores and the kind of even like kind of which businesses are set up there and kind of what kind of people they attract. So obviously Shanghai, Shenzhen, they have more like young people who are like more into pop culture, or they're kind of more MNCs there. So like MNCs, when they choose where to like set up headquarters, they're obviously more comfortable with places that feel like more like the West. Yeah, so I think Beijing does this as well, but definitely I feel it stronger in Shanghai. Yeah, but that's just one small sliver of China. So like during my summer holidays, I did travel a little bit to like more of the west, so Western China. I didn't go super west to like Xinjiang or like kind of up the like Tibetan mountains, but more of like southwest to places like Yunnan, Sichuan. I didn't get to go to Sichuan yet. I'm planning to do that, but I went to Yunnan, and it's so different. So like there's so much more nature there. It's like a much higher sea level, so like a lot of people get kind of sick because they're not used to like the high altitude
and the low oxygen.
Yeah. So luckily none of us in our troop felt like that, but I'm just seeing like mountains and seeing so much like unpolluted like water and like mountains and like just trekking into the like just go even like driving along these like windy like mountain roads. It was very scary, but it was really worth it. And I think it was the first time that I saw China in like a light that was different from, because even on our immersion trips, we only went to places like the like southern coastal cities or like Beijing or like we visited some history, but not so much of just like pure like nature. Yeah, so like to just see like if you go to Dali, there's this lake that's so big that they call it a sea because it looks like a sea. Yeah, but like just like seeing how like the culture is there. Like Yunnan is this really interesting place because out of the 55 like ethnic groups in China, I think I think 52 or 53 come from this one province alone. Yeah, I could fact check me on this, but I think it was like an astonishing number of kind of like different like ethnic minorities in this one province. And you can see because the mountains and the valleys, they separate some of these different tribes and they sort of like start their own cultures. And there's a girl from the EF group in our club right now. She's one of our scholars, and I managed to meet her at her hometown. And it was just so cool, like going there and seeing all this culture and diversity that you don't really see in the big cities. Yeah, and just kind of seeing. I also went to Guizhou, which is next to Yunnan. Yeah, and then it's also this place that kind of really took off because of its beauty, of its nature, and then that tourism kind of helped it like grow economically and have more people come to the place. And that's also where Altai is from. Yeah, Guizhou Altai. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I think people always tell me, like, especially my seniors and like other people who've traveled within China, that you should go to like more places in China, because it really is that China is so diverse and it's really more than just Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen. Yeah, so I'm hoping to do more of that when I go.
And I'm feeling so encouraged to hear this, because the same happens when people visit the States and it's like, oh, only New York, oh, only LA. It's like, hey, why don't you take some water in Flint, Michigan? Or why don't you go with a lowrider right there in Houston, Texas? Or why don't you go and eat some barbecue in Austin or Kansas City? Or what about you, like, discover those parts that are not so many mainstreams, but they have so much value, the tangibles and the intangibles. Now, we discussed about history, and the following can be polemic, you may want to discuss or not, but when you have been in Beijing and in other places of China, the mainland, what comes to their minds and also to your mind when they hear the word Hong Kong?
I think there's definitely a lot of kind of like fear or kind of caution when you talk about Taiwan, Hong Kong, Macau. You have to use very politically correct language, so you can't call them like different countries. Yeah, you have to refer to them as Hong Kong, China, or Taiwan, China. Yeah, but honestly, this doesn't come up that much in our normal day conversation, because we just refer to like Hong Kong as Hong Kong. Maybe it's just the people I like interact with at school. We don't get that political. Maybe it's because I'm a business student. Yeah,
it's
so
all about business.
Yeah, we talk more about kind of like Hong Kong as a finance hub rather than like what we think is the newest like political struggle between like Hong Kong and China. So like at least in my experience, it's still been okay. Like I haven't been in a situation where it escalated to a conflict or it was something that was very uncomfortable after somebody said something. It's more of this kind of faint idea or this like kind of atmosphere where you just need to be careful of what you say. Otherwise, maybe you can't post it. So everything on the Chinese internet is vetted and it has to go through manual verification to see whether there's anything that's like inflammatory or just something that the Chinese government doesn't want on the internet because they think it's unhealthy or it's going to kind of like lead to like negative like social discourse, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting because like even when I have friends who want to post a kind of videos. So like sometimes for our coursework, we have to record videos and put them online. Yeah, but even then, you have to like kind of wait for the manual people or the algorithms to check through and see if your video has any, like, if you weren't specific enough about like which parts of China belong to China, like stuff like that. But overall, I think when you just talk daily business, so far in my experience, not too much. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been in Hong Kong twice, and I've seen that people really want to get into the digital currencies. They want to buy Dogecoin, and it's like, hey, you need to discuss that with yourself, okay? I'm not here to do any financial advice, or guest is not here to do financial advice. But if you want to buy a Shiba Inu and walk the street with your dog, that's on you, okay? But I have seen that, and also I've seen a very different dynamic. A lot of cash, like in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong, yeah.
Like you have to pay with cash.
Yeah.
Here we got a chance to pay with a card or the tap, no problem. But
Hong
right
Kong has
there,
a lot of those like mom and pop restaurants, these really old like stalls, and I think they don't want to figure out how to. They don't want to pay the fees for one. They don't want to figure out how to like do the QR code digital payments, so they'll just take cash.
yeah.
That was something that I also felt like. Actually, every time I come back to Singapore, like in China, you never touch cash. Like I don't think anybody has seen cash in the
Are you serious?
in the past like decade.
Wow.
Like no, like people don't even buy wallets anymore because you kind of just get like card holders. You don't need like a
What?
wallet where you can slot notes into.
Wait a second.
I have never touched.
So
like
you're
a
saying that
Chinese
this is a relic of the past in China?
Because even cards nowadays, people keep it on their phones or on their like
Wow.
smartwatches.
That's
Yeah,
so
so like
surprising.
coming back to Singapore, it feels really rustic to be able to like kind of just use cash here. Yeah.
That's very surprising. Yeah, because usually people want to have cash in their hands. And all the cash that people use right there in China is surprising. I cannot believe that right now I'm considered a relic of the Cold War because I'm having a wallet that holds some notes.
I think what's interesting about China is that you have super apps, or you have these apps where they try to offer you so much convenience. And, because payments, if you think about it, is everywhere. Like you can like book hotels and then you can link it to the payment. So like literally the big internet giants, they want to cover every aspect of your life, and one of the quickest ways to do it is to make sure that you make them their wallet first. You make them your wallet first, so that like any kind of expense you have or any kind of consumption, you kind of have to go through them. So I think that's really interesting. I've enjoyed probably the most convenience and the most kind of like most convenience and the most kind of value also, because they do compete like the different platforms, so they try to offer you deals and stuff like that. And since it's all through payments, everything is super easy to like redeem and super clear cut, super fast, and like even refunds, everything, it's all connected. So I think that's honestly really, really great. Yeah.
Given your experience there, I need to ask one question about the digital bank currencies, the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies. I remember reading about the digital renminbi.
Yeah.
So how the society has been taking those things?
I think they did try to roll it out to, I think maybe almost a year ago, but I don't think it really took off for like just like used for like normal people. Yeah. I think they definitely have some kind of other use for this, but I'm not really sure about it. Yeah.
It's good that you mentioned at before answering that question that most of the payments has been digital. So in a certain way it was like, oh yeah, we have the digital renminbi. I'm comfortable with my super app. Maybe that can be the situation. Yeah, we need to ask people there. Now, given all this time that you've been experiencing, both in Singapore and in China, which other place have you been that tells you, oh, there are certain differences?
I think maybe the UK, because I've met some of the most friendly people in the UK where so basically we went on a tour in Oxford, and then we just sat down in a restaurant, and then people were coming up to us asking us, where we were, which country we came from, and then what we were there for, and then it turns out it was this old man who was an Oxford alumni, and he just started sharing with us, what it was like studying here, and he asked about us and like what we were interested in and what we were doing at school, how we were finding the trip. Yeah, and like I think throughout the trip I met a lot of like people who are like really like funny and like popping into our photos, and like even like the like peers that we met, so people who are our age. I think they really like welcomed us like with like, not to say that Asians aren't friendly, but I think they're like friendly in a more like expressive way, and I think they're just a bit more high energy than some of the Asians. Yeah, and I think a lot of them are a bit less afraid to express their kind of opinions, even if it's kind of like disagrees with you, or if it's kind of out there. I think they're still really like confident and willing to say it. But I think Asians, they tend to second guess themselves a little bit more, or they're a little bit too polite, so they don't want to say stuff that goes against like the greater society. Yeah, but I think that's probably the most stark like difference I felt culturally. Yeah.
This is something that also I encourage the people I met, that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say, listen, I don't like football, I like basketball. Things like that. I can imagine somebody from the UK saying that, oh yeah, Leeds is better than Manchester City. They will disagree right away, unless they are from Leeds. And we can go hours and hours, and people will be like, oh look at that, this is very beautiful to learn from you. But there are gonna be also people, young people watching you. Among them there are gonna be some young Rebeccas watching you. So I want to ask you, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Okay. I think it would be to not idolize people too much. Because I think when I was growing up, I always wanted someone to look up to, like to the extreme, where I would think that everything they say is right, or that like I just wanted a teacher to learn endlessly from. But I think like growing up, I've realized that learning to think for yourself, and learning not to say that you can't find mentors or you can't find people that you admire and you want to learn from, but I think just understanding that every one of your heroes, or everyone who's been successful, or achieved a lot, like there are different things to learn from different people, and to always kind of think back to yourself whether you think something is true, or whether what they say could have been right at a certain time. Maybe it's not that accurate anymore, or maybe it's not that relevant anymore. And you working on your own understanding and kind of thinking critically about all these heroes and all these people you admire, but also always asking yourself whether it makes sense to you, whether you can investigate it, test those assumptions. I think that's more important than just going around taking people's words and like as the gospel of truth. I think growing up I was a bit like that, but I think now I think I've learned to like kind of be a bit more critical when I look at who I'm listening to, or like what kind of things I want to learn, what kind of things that I think I need to like figure out for myself. Yeah.
That's a powerful message. And I cannot find a better way to close this episode. How people can find you?
On LinkedIn. I'm not really active on there, but I'm also on WeChat, but that's more of a different process.
It's fine.
Yeah,
People
you
will
can
always
share
find
my
you.
QR code. I don't know, but it's a little bit of a hassle if you have to download another app.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, people will always find a way. When there is a will, there is a way.
Yeah, I'm probably still on Facebook as well, but I probably haven't touched it in a long time.
Rebecca, I really enjoyed doing this episode with you. For people out there, please stay safe and see you when I see you. Bye. And that's it.